I had the honor to work with the World Economic Forum and a number of key industry stakeholders from around the world on an initiative called the Future of Construction, and that's exactly what I'd like to share with you in my presentation today, some of the insights from this multi-year initiative. As you can see on this slide, many global players from across the value chain, construction, design and engineering, materials, building equipment were included there and also vetted our results. So, since we want to talk about the future of construction, let me first talk about the past. As many of you know, if we look at productivity statistics of the construction sector, we all see that the productivity progress in construction was less than in many other industries. Here we've put US data, and I know that this data is often debated about, but I think the main point here is while productivity progress in many industries has been at around 2% per year, in construction we've seen less, and I think this holds pretty much across countries, different picture country by country. Obviously, the construction industry has been facing increasing complexity over the years, more complex, larger projects. Also, the industry itself is in a much more challenging environment than many other industries, you know, on-site business, projects, not products, very fragmented value chain, then the matters of regulation that is also increasing. So many reasons for that, but as we were discussing within the collaborators of the World Economic Forum Future of Construction Initiative, one of the key reasons people also thought this issue has occurred is that the industry, let's say, has not been up to many other industries in adopting digital and other new technologies. And this was when we were in Davos, and actually at that time, the meeting topic in Davos was the fourth industrial revolution. But as we convened the many CEOs of across the industry, in our construction industry session, one of them actually said that we're not even in the third industrial revolution, and we really need a step change here. But the positive statement was also that this is feasible because there are a lot of new technologies. And I also think that I would say solution scarcity in terms of digital technologies that existed in the past, you know, has really changed over the last couple of years. And while construction industry has not maybe changed that much in the past, I really think it is imperative to change in the future. And that is also because the construction industry is at the center of some of the key global megatrends that we're facing as societies. And first, you know, last week there's been a lot of discussion around energy, around climate and climate change. Buildings are responsible for 30% of our emissions, and the construction industry is the #1 consumer of global raw materials, steel, concrete, and the like. So I think the construction industry can be a key part of the solution on environmental matters. But there are also economic issues. We know the construction industry built our infrastructure, which keeps our societies running. And we know globally there is an infrastructure gap of around 1 trillion as per the data provided by the Global Infrastructure Hub. And while the public discussion is often very much focused on how we can raise more money to satisfy this demand, I think if with a more productive construction industry, we could also at least partly address this deficit. And last but not least, there are also social issues. Urbanization is a well-known issue, especially in the emerging world, with 200,000 people moving to our cities globally, all looking for affordable housing. Again, here the construction industry can be a key part of the solution. And I think it's very important that the industry itself, I think, sometimes is a bit not at the center stage of some of these public debates, but I think with some changes, it can actually be a part of that, of many of the societal challenges. And I think that's a very strong opportunity for the industry that can also be increasingly captured through new technologies. And in fact, many of these new digital technologies are rising as we speak, and many have been around for several years. Let me go quickly through some of the main technologies that we see out there. First of all, there's prefab, you all know, but I think the interesting thing around prefab together with digital can make totally new possibilities. So if you look at the startup Catera in the US, that has really brought an integrated approach into prefab, heavily supported by digital processes and digital models. And they're one of the first startups that have reached unicorn status in the construction industry. I think that is one of the promising technologies. Obviously, there are advanced building materials out there. There's some people talk about 3D printing, which I think is still, at least right now, very much a niche technology, just pioneered by a couple of startups such as WinSun or Abiscore and many others. But we also see that some of the big construction companies are making moves here. We've seen investments from Vinci and Bouygues in that space. So it will be interesting to watch. And while printing houses, maybe for affordable housing purposes, simple single-story houses. By the way, Abiscore is claiming to build such a house at just $10,000. Might be an interesting solution. Also 3D printing for models or molds or smaller scale solutions, certain joints and so on could also be a future technology. Then we have here, we say autonomous construction. Well, I think autonomous construction is probably very, very far away. But anyways, any increasing use of automation technologies in construction, be it drones, which are much more commonplace in many countries nowadays, but even then later for some of the construction machinery and equipment, and we see first pilots in that space. For example, an Australian company developed a bricklaying robot, which is in an early phase, but at a very, very high productivity rate. There could be some promising breakthroughs in the years to come. Then there is augmented reality, virtualization. I think quite clear, especially virtual reality, really seeing what will be built up front by the various stakeholders that will be using this. I've seen many examples, for example, in the hospital sector, where you really bring the facility managers, the doctors, and everybody who will use this in to provide feedback early on into the process in a virtual environment is one of the other technologies. Data, big data, predictive analytics, AI, in an industry where there's so many moving parts. So it's kind of it would be a perfect case for application for such applications, because there's high data variety, high data volumes, high data velocity. So many opportunities there, and this will really be underpinned by sensors that are increasingly cheap and available and robust to be used in the construction sector. Another area where we've seen especially a lot of startup activity is in the whole area of real-time on-site collaboration, where the likes of FieldWire, PlanGrid have launched their real-time collaboration apps. Is obviously another key field. 3D scanning to get reality into the models, and last but not least, building information modeling. Been around for quite some time already, but also with increased adoption and a very central role as the central data repository in this whole digital transformation, and not only for the 3D data, but also for later for schedule data, cost data, and so on. So a lot of technology is emerging. When we actually asked the constituents of the World Economic Forum which technologies they think are the ones that are going to have the biggest impact on the industry, 5 have been consistently ranked as the highest. As I've mentioned, the real-time mobile collaboration, BIM, prefab, wireless monitoring, the whole IoT, sensor-based IoT solutions, and big data and analytics. I think one of the reasons behind that is obviously these are the technologies that are right now most commonly used and most mature, and some of the technologies you see below are probably still a little bit farther away, but it's still interesting to watch how they will develop further. I think one really important element is that it's not only new technologies that are emerging, but a whole new ecosystem of innovation. And this is also what we've seen in other industries. Change typically comes when a whole innovation ecosystem emerges. And here, in all these 10 technologies, there are prominent startups that we've put here on this slide. But independent of the individual startups, and some of them, might fail, I think what really underpins this is also an emerging ecosystem of funders of those. So, for example, brick and mortar ventures in the Silicon Valley, founded by one of the sons of the Bechtel family, is a dedicated VC to this industry to support this whole digital innovation ecosystem emerging. And in fact, in total, we've seen now in the last year 6 billion of investment into these, and this is really driving a lot of this innovation. And you might have also seen, and one of the examples that some people often cite is obviously Elon Musk also even doing something in the, let's say, broader construction space with his tunnel boring company. We don't know where this is heading, but I'm mentioning it just for one particular reason, because number one, Elon Musk has always been very good in spotting industries that are ripe for some disruption. And secondly, also because if high-profile people like him also do something like this, the talent and the money will flow. And I think talent is one of the key things to drive the innovation in the industry. And so I've been talking a lot about startups now, but the established players in the industries obviously have also taken notice, and really many of them started their own digital hubs or incubators. For example, Vinci with Leonard, or Ferrovial with their digital hub. So there are plenty of examples. Or Skanska is doing a lot of digital innovation projects. And I think the startups, in collaboration with the incumbents, will really drive the industry forward. Well, I think a lot has already happened. When we look quite, let's say, objectively at where the industry stands in its overall digitalization journey today, the industry is still lagging behind some other industries to some extent. And let me first explain what you actually see here. So that is based on data of BCG's Digital Acceleration Index, which is a standardized survey. We've done this for 5,000 companies globally across different sectors with 36 questions along 4 maturity levels that you see here: digital passive, digital literate, digital performer, all the way to the digital leader. And you see construction comes in as digital literate. And so this kind of standardized survey allows to compare across industries. Obviously, industries are somewhat different, so this is just a high-level indication. But what is more important, since we have very detailed questions, is also interesting to see what are the areas where construction players still need to catch up. And these are particularly the areas of digitalizing the supply chain and in setting up data platforms, really collecting data in a very structured way and then also using it for new use cases. And thirdly, also on the digital skills aspect, there is additional room for improvement. As I said, there is still some room to improve on digital, but if we look into the future, one of the other trends that I think will be affecting the industry is artificial intelligence. And we already see today at a few examples how powerful AI could actually be for this industry. First of all, data at scale, while the overall industry, the data collection is not everywhere in a super structured way, in some pockets, data at scale is becoming available. So for example, one new tool launched by Autodesk as part of their BIM 360 suite draws on data of 150 million construction issues from more than 30,000 projects and predicts in a certain project environment whether quality or safety issues could occur. And that has, on trials with BAM, reduced occurrence of such issues by 20%, thus freeing up time of project managers. So just that is one example where data at scale can really support construction managers in their decision making and daily work. Another area where we see a lot of opportunities for the construction sector is machine vision. You all have noted that there's a lot of new interesting use cases based on machine vision. For example, in the security space, where machine vision can spot people with guns, for example. But in the construction sector, one really interesting example that I've also personally seen on a recent tech tour in the Silicon Valley is a company called Doxel. And they have a small robot that scans construction sites on a daily basis, and with that has AI algorithms that can compare the visual data that's recorded with the BIM models and spot any deviations. So effectively, it's an early warning system on any deviations that might occur, and obviously you can even do other things, schedule comparison, cost comparisons based on that visual data recorded by that robot. So this could be, especially for owners, a quite interesting technology to be better informed on what's going on site and intervene earlier and therefore prevent some costly mistakes. And last but not least, AI also increasingly enables robotics. While robotics, we know it more from the manufacturing shop floor, the construction environment is very complicated, many safety issues. So robotics, I think, will remain a niche there for quite some time. But I've also seen a very interesting startup company that now developed a drywall finishing robot. And that is actually being used on construction sites in San Francisco. Their approach is not to fully automate the drywall finishing. It does 95% of the job, and they don't want to solve the edge problems, which are often really the hardest parts to solve, but they will still use human labor for this. So there is always human in the loop, as you say, an operator and somebody who's a craftsman who can finish the job, but they're leveraging robots to do, let's say, some of the more repetitive, dull work. And they also, one of their key things why they've also started in San Francisco is because there's such a shortage of labor. So, whenever we talk about robotics in industry, a lot of people immediately think about this will be sort of demand-free construction site, but I think this is still very, very, very far away, but still robots can help on the productivity for certain niche applications. So, and that just is an outlook on where we could be heading. If we take all of this together, we've estimated, based on a literature review of many impact reports and also many expert interviews, what could be the potential impact from all of this digitalization of the industry. And we came to a conclusion that around 10 to 15% reduction in life cycle costs could be feasible, and even a bit more on the construction time. Obviously, it all depends a bit which vertical, office, highway, power plant you exactly look into. But these numbers is also what we've been, or what many of the industry stakeholders confirmed to us when we presented it to them. I think if we look at this number, if you think of the global construction market, which is around 9 to 10 trillion, apply 10% to that, could be a saving of a trillion. I've noted earlier the infrastructure gap is 1 trillion. You know, obviously infrastructure is just a part of the global construction market, but anyways, a meaningful impact on productivity could also contribute to close some of this gap. And we do not only need to look for new money to finance all these infrastructure projects. With this, in order to make all of this a reality, we think it really requires coordinated actions across the many stakeholders in the industry. First, there are the governments. We know in the UK with the construction sector deal, they're doing things, but in a lot of countries there are no clear plans on how the governments really drive this transformation of the industry forward. And there are things such as smart regulation, building codes that allow for innovation, also a certain incubation role, a funding role on flagship innovation projects, and also the whole education schemes need to be adjusted for some of these things. Secondly, it's also a big part is also with the project owners. It's not just in the construction industry. There, in the end, the contracting parties and the way they contract will also determine in terms of what construction companies can and will do. So their, I would say, technology readiness and their culture towards innovation and their particular procurement models will very much drive what is possible for the industry. So, for example, one of our sessions within the World Economic Forum, some people stated that if you want to really use BIM in a meaningful way, you also need to move more towards DB-type contracting models and more away from DBB-type models to really unlock all the benefits. But then, naturally, it's also the construction companies themselves need to think about such new business models, also think about where to implement all these use cases and technologies in their operations. And I think one really important point is to really start on pain points. So we're not using technology for technology's sake, but really start where specific pain points are, and we're helping many companies in this journey. But innovation teams that foster an innovation culture and help also manage that collaboration with the broader ecosystem, because not everything or many things don't need to be developed in-house. Many startups, many solution providers and established software tech companies out there that you can draw on, which really managing this whole process of integrating these technologies in processes obviously has to be managed. And last but not least, there's also a role with the various suppliers from building materials to software in driving that industry transformation. When we asked our CEOs of the construction industry, what are their imperatives going forward to enable this transformation. The interesting result was that 81% of the CEOs thought that attracting new talent and building these digital skills is the key constraint that they're facing. It's also adopting the technologies at scale and building the data digital platforms, but to a lesser extent than the whole skills topic. One other priority for them is also to integrate and collaborate more across the value chain, which I think is a very important piece. And we see companies making moves along all these top priorities. I've mentioned some of the companies setting up digital hubs to attract talent, such as Ferrovial. We've also seen Bechtel setting up an internal data science team, establishing a big data lake, and even retroactively digitalizing projects from the past. So a lot of action is actually happening along these priorities. But let me get back to the talent issue. As the CEOs were expressing this as a very important priority for them, and it was nicely stated by one of the constituents in our Davos session. He said, it's actually a vicious circle. We need digital talent to adopt new technologies, but to attract them, we need new technology. So I think a nice statement illustrating that challenge. But we also think there are many solutions, but the whole talent topic is a much broader one. It's not only around digital talent. The industry itself also faces a broader talent issue, and that was another topic we've addressed in this initiative. Because as you may know some of these statistics, 86% of contractors, I think they're mostly from the UK, 86% of contractors face difficulties in recruiting, is a very low share of women, workforce is aging rapidly, and the attractiveness of a career in construction among young people, let's say, is not necessarily the highest. And this, as this has been recognized, at least by the companies in our initiative, we also set out for another piece of work on what could be measures to close this talent gap. And many of the things, companies can drive that. Workplace innovation, leveraging new technologies, engaging in strategic workforce planning. Some of the things need to be driven on an industry level, image campaigns, jointly targeting new talent pools, cooperation with education providers. And some of the things need to be done on a government level. And all of this, we won't have time to go into this in more detail with the limited time available today. But I wanted to take that opportunity and refer you to some of our reports that we have. So as you can see in the bottom row, there is one dedicated report on solving the talent gap. There are all these various other reports we've done together with the World Economic Forum. First on assessing the industry status quo and the opportunities and challenges, looking at innovators and how they can become successful in the construction ecosystem, and also developing scenarios for the future of construction. And then we have some other more specialized reports on prefab and 3D printing, and you can find all of this at the website here or on the BCG homepage. With that, I would conclude here. Thanks a lot for your attention. I know the whole setup here was maybe a bit difficult. I hope you understood me really well, and I hope that next time I can come personally to the conference and share more of our findings.